So the next three variable types we want to talk about is the text variable, the string variable, and the name variable. So let's go ahead and create a text variable. And for this one, I'm going to call it game over message. So this is a message that will be displayed once the player dies, for example. And I'm going to call it, or it changes to a text variable. I'm going to hold Control and drag it out. And you can see here, now we have a text variable. We have to click compile to add a value. And here in the default value, we can add a text. So for example, we can say, you've died, or something like this. So now we have a text, and if I connect it to the string variable and it converts it, click compile and play, you can say that it says you've died up here to the left. Okay, so this is a text variable. Now we can also create a string variable, and for this one, let's call it server name. And we choose string type. We can drag it out, and you can see here now we have a string variable. If I compile, a string is also a line of text, and I'll explain to you in a bit what the difference is. So we can also, for example, for the server name, let's call it just my name, Mustafa server. So this is my server name that you can see when you join the game. And let me disconnect this, and I want to drag it down here. And if you connect it, you can see that it's actually not converting anything, because this is a string and this is a string also. So it doesn't need to convert anything. So we can just connect it directly and click on compile and play. And you can see here it says Mustafa server. Okay. And now this is a string, and the last one, before I explain the difference between these two, the last one is a name variable. So for this one, for example, we can call it weapon name, and we can choose the name here, name variable type. And let's drag it out again, click on compile, and you can see here, you can choose a line of text again. So for example, if this is a shooter, I have an AK-47. Okay, click on compile, connect it, it will convert it to a string, compile and save, and click on play. And you can see it says AK-47. Okay, so these are the text variable types, the text, the string, and the name. And you can see you can write a line of code for each of them. So what is the difference between these three? You can write a line of code in all of them. So what is the difference? The difference is for the text variable, this one uses the most memory, this is the medium, this is the low memory. And for the text variable, this one is localizable. You can see here, if I hold the mouse over this text, it says localized text. And what localization is, you maybe already know it, but this is when you translate a line of text in other languages. So for example, if I want my game in English, but I also want it in German, I also want it in Chinese or in Japanese, I want to translate this game over message to Chinese too inside of my game. And this can only be done if you have a text variable. You can't translate the engine won't be able to translate the string variables. It can only translate the text variables. So when you create a line of text and you want your game in different languages, you have to have in mind, do you want to translate this line you're about to write? And if yes, I want to translate it, then go ahead and make a text variable, because you can't translate these others to other languages. And just to show you quickly, this is not about localization translation, but here inside of the localization dashboard, here you can see here you have the English language, and you can add more languages, and you can translate to different languages. And this can only be done for text variables, okay? The string variable, you can't translate this. This cannot be translated like the text variable. but you can write a line of code, and this can be used for things that is not going to be translated. So if your name or if your game is never going to be translated, you can also just use a string to write this game over message. You don't have to use a text if you don't want translation. So this is also a line of text, and this is not going to be able to be translated. And for example, a server name, if you're playing online, you don't really want to translate my server name to other languages. It doesn't really make any sense. So for server name, I would be using the string variable. And the last one is the name. And for name, this one cannot be translated. And also a good thing to know, these two variables can be manipulated. This cannot be manipulated. And what I mean by this is, for example, if you drag out from the string and you click on append, you can actually add more text to your text over here. So for example, if I write inside of the append Mustafa server, it says Mustafa server here. And for example, if I write number 1, if I connect this pin to the print string just so I can print it and I can show you, if I click play, now it says Mustafa server number 1. So the text variable and the string variable can be manipulated during the game. This one cannot be manipulated, and this will be unique. It will only be called AK47, and you don't really have something that can add stuff to it. So this is the one that uses less memory than these two, and only using these for unique things. For example, my name of the weapon is always going to stay the same, so I'm never going to change it. It's always going to be called AK47. So for the weapon names, I would use this variable. Also, for example, you can use it if you have achievements in your game and you want an ID to these achievements. So for example, your ID is ACH, for example, for achievement 07. This is never going to change. I would use achievement IDs, and I would use a name variable for this. So these are the text variables. You can write text in all of them, but these are the main differences for these variables.